Hi everyone, it's Beth from the West Dallas Public Library, and welcome to another episode of our Who HQ Summer Book Club. We're on episode 4 in What Was Pompeii. This puts us at chapter 8, Public Places. The weather in southern Italy is sunny and warm for most of the year, so the people of Pompeii spent a great deal of time outdoors. If they weren't at home or at work, townspeople would gather in public areas such as the Forum, the 2 theaters, the amphitheater, and the many temples all over town, and the public baths. The heart of Pompeii was the Forum, a group of buildings surrounding a large open rectangular area. It measures approximately 150 feet wide and 500 feet long, and is the oldest part of Pompeii. Surrounded by at least 40 statues of gods, military heroes, and emperors, the Forum had many purposes. Farmers brought their goods to the weekly market, kind of like our farmers market. On hot days, teachers would bring their students and teach in the shade of the double-height colonnade that surrounded the Forum on 3 sides. People also came to worship in the 2 main temples, the Temple of Apollo and the Temple of Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. Another building, called the Basilica, housed law courts. This was where magistrates, or judges, would hear cases and make rulings. Magistrates were elected by the male citizens of Pompeii. Their job was to enforce laws passed by an assembly of 100 men. These men were chosen from the most important families of Pompeii. The highest honor was to be elected patron. The patron represented Pompeii in Rome. Politics was important to the citizens of Pompeii. Elections were held every year. At the time of the eruption, there were more than 2,500 election posters all over town, painted in red or black. Posters could be found on the walls of houses, shops, all along Pompeii's main streets. Although women could not vote in elections or hold public office, they found ways to take part in political life, most often by campaigning for the election of their sons or family friends. Some of the election posters bear messages from women. Iuna asks you to elect Helvius Sabinus, and I beg you to elect Helvius Sabinus, worthy of public office. Maria asks this. The largest building in the Forum at Pompeii was called Eumachia, after the woman who had it built. There are 2 different inscriptions on the building identifying her as the donor. Eumachia also had a large statue of herself placed prominently inside the building. The building's exact purpose remains a mystery. Some archaeologists believe that Eumachia was trying to help her son's political career by giving a magnificent building to the city. Okay, a blurb is about cemeteries. One thing you won't see inside the city walls of Pompeii is a cemetery. This is because Roman law decreed that no person, no matter how rich or famous, could be buried inside a city. In Pompeii, tombs of the wealthy lined the roads leading to the city. Some tombs were 2 stories tall. Just outside one of the gates is the tomb of Eumachia, the same Eumachia who sponsored the largest building in the Forum. The tomb she built for herself and her family is one of Pompeii's largest. It has 2 levels and a circular seating area where friends and relatives could rest when they came to pay their respects to the dead. Unfortunately, Eumachia died when Vesuvius erupted, and she never got to be buried inside her fancy tomb. Chapter 9, Going to the Theater. The people of Pompeii enjoyed going to the theater, and they had two to choose from, located right next to each other. The older, smaller theater was called the Odeon, and was covered with a wooden roof. 1,200 people could sit in the semicircular rows of seats that faced an open stage. Besides plays, Pompeians could also attend concerts, lectures in the Odeon. The larger theater held 5,000 people. There was even room for an orchestra in front of the stage. On hot summer days, a large awning stretched over the entire theater to provide shade for the spectators. Sometimes perfumed water would be sprayed on the audience. This attraction was announced in advance to increase attendance. So if it was a hot day and you knew you were going to get sprayed, you might want to come. Theater goers saw a variety of plays: Greek tragedies, Roman comedies, and pantomime were all popular. Pompeians loved to see slapstick farces, in which oafs, idiots, and stuck-up buffoons were ridiculed. If the play was a tragedy, actors wore masks with exaggerated frowns and sad expressions. When the play was a comedy, the face on the mask was usually smiling and happy. Whether comedy or tragedy, all the actors were men. Women were only allowed to perform in certain plays called pantomimes. Both theaters were located in the oldest parts of Pompeii. This was where the earliest settlers built their houses. Unlike the rest of Pompeii, which is built on a grid system with streets running at right angles to each other, the streets in the oldest part run helter-skelter. Chapter 10. Blood Sports. The oval amphitheater of Pompeii, seating 20,000 spectators. Remember, the bigger theater held 5,000. So this amphitheater holds 20,000 spectators, was one of the largest anywhere in the Roman Empire. The crowds who poured inside, climbing up outdoor stairways, did not come to see plays or listen to music. They came to watch professional fighters called gladiators battle against each other, often to the death. Gladiators were usually prisoners of war or condemned criminals. Some were poor men hoping to win wealth and glory. Most gladiators belonged to special schools where they were trained to fight. Gladiatorial games were extremely popular and often paid for by rich men who were running for office in Pompeii. They would put up painted signs announcing their sponsorship of the fights. One sign in Pompeii advertised 20 pairs of gladiators of Quintus Monius Rufus will fight at Nola the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of May, and there will be a hunt. The best seats were those closest to the fighting. Spectators usually had to pay to sit there. Seats in the top 18 rows of the amphitheater were free. Sometimes a generous sponsor would let everyone in for free. The floor of the amphitheater was covered in sand to soak up blood from the fights. Often the opening acts pitted men armed with only daggers against wild animals such as tigers and bears. A tiger could easily tear a man apart. A bear could kill a gladiator with merely a quick swipe of its paw. The main acts featured gladiator against gladiator. Some of the best fighters were as popular as movie stars are today. According to graffiti found on a wall in Pompeii, a gladiator named Silatus was the man the girls sigh for. I think that means that the girls found him handsome. Try to imagine two men circling each other, weapons lifted, ready to kill the other, each ready to kill the other. Perhaps one is called Rufus, and the other is named Atticus. They are sweating and out of breath because for the last 15 minutes they have been engaged in a deadly battle. In his left hand, Rufus is holding a large fishing net made from rope. A shoulder guard protects his arm. In his right hand, he carries a long three-pronged lance called a trident. He is the type of gladiator called retiarius. Retiarius. Okay. His opponent, Atticus, is carrying a sharp, two-edged sword and a long rectangular shield. A metal helmet protects his head. The helmet is smooth to make it harder for Rufus's net to snag it. Atticus is a type of gladiator known as Secchiotor. Atticus, the Secchiotor, is much more experienced than Rufus. He has fought 14 fights and won them all. Rufus, the netman, has only fought 2 matches. But so far, he has been forcing Atticus to retreat. Then something unexpected happens. Atticus slips in the soft sand of the amphitheater. While he is down, Rufus quickly throws his net, which entraps Atticus, making it impossible for him to use his sword or shield. Rufus, the retiarius, leaps forward and drives the sharpened point of his trident into his opponent's thigh. The crowd is going wild. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce these right. The Secchiotor groans and drops his sword. He lies on his back while the retiarius stands above him, ready to deliver the final blow. Turning to the 20,000 spectators, Atticus holds up the index finger of his left hand. This gesture means that he is asking for mercy. The sponsor of that day's games is allowed to decide whether or not Rufus may go in for the kill. However, the custom is to let the spectators decide. Luckily for Atticus, he is a favorite of this crowd. Pompeians have watched him fight and win many times before today. They also know that Rufus, the less experienced gladiator, got lucky. If Atticus hadn't slipped in the sand, it might well have been Rufus lying on the ground and gravely wounded. In a moment, thousands of hands are raised in the air. Practically everyone has their thumbs turned down. So down means this is the signal that Atticus has hoped for. It means Rufus must put his weapon down and let Atticus live. No more blood will be shed between these two gladiators, at least not today. Okay, I'm going to do a little blurb about the types of gladiators. These have a lot more names that I might mispronounce, so I apologize, but I'll do my best. In addition to the retiarius and Secchiotor, there were several other types of gladiators. Their names come from the type of armor they wore and the type of weapons they carried. A murmillo wore a helmet with a fish motif and carried a sword and shield. A hoplomachus carried a lance and a short sword suitable for thrusting but not slashing. This kind of gladiator might have also had a dagger, a small circular shield that didn't really offer much protection, and a helmet with a visor. A Samnite carried a short sword and heavy shield, and wore an ornate helmet with a visor. A bestiaris fought wild animals with spears and knives. For protection, a bestiaris might have nothing more than a small shield and helmet. A Thracian carried a short curved sword and small shield. All Thracians wore helmets with a wide brim and visor. The helmet usually was decorated with a crest of a griffin, a mythical creature with the body, tail, and back legs of a lion, and the head and wings of an eagle. Okay, that is where we'll stop for today. Join me tomorrow at 7 o'clock for the last episode in our trip to Pompeii, when we read What Was Pompeii. Bye.